everyone. Here we're at the, the Note Center roundtable discussion. Today, our topic is real estate investing strategies, and Paul's also going to talk about some tax considerations related with that. And why don't we start with Dr. Ivan about your real estate investing strategies and mortgage notes in particular?
Okay, great. I'm Dr. Ivan Terrera. I'm a practicing dentist. I am known as the Note Doctor. I've been involved in real estate investing for around 25 years. I started just like a lot of people. um, I bought a lot and I developed that into a home, sold it with a lease option, rent to own. Did that for a while, bought some small multifamily houses, and I decided to get into note investing because I thought that this is the best way to get into real estate without being involved with what I call the triple T: tenants, toilets, and termites or trash. And this is a way to control the property without being actively involved in the maintenance of the property. So, what I do is I buy existing notes at a discount, existing performing notes at a discount, and we call banks and hedge funds and some mortgage brokers to help us with finding people that want to sell the mortgage, excuse me, and we add that to the portfolio. And we can help people who want to learn how to invest in mortgage notes passively without needing to get involved in the dirty little aspects of investing. We can handle that for anyone who wants to invest with us. We can source notes that will fit your investment criteria and profile. Of course, I am not an investment advisor. I don't pretend to be one. Every investment has its risks and advantages.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ivan. So, when we're talking about mortgage notes, we're really talking about the promissory notes secured by a property, just in
Exactly.
case somebody's new to the lingo. And reiterate, you offer some passive investment opportunities where you take on the risk and they get a guaranteed return on it. So
Yes.
and you can also, as you offered, talk to anybody about what more the intricacies of the real estate investing notes. So Paul, I know that you have, well, I think you've done everything.
Close, but not everything.
Not everything, but I think we've talked to you about investing in sort of self storage facilities and other things that have, you know, no toilets, but a good income perspective. Do you want to talk about some of your investment strategies?
Well, when you invest in notes, then you are or have to look at the interest rates and what happens to them every single day. The actual cost that you pay is, as Ivan said, a discounted rate. So that's how you make money. If you bought it at market value, you wouldn't really make a whole lot of money. The one
Mhm.
thing that I can bring to the table is that when you own these notes and you invest in them and then you pass on, those notes can go to your heirs at fair market value. And I know we've talked about that in the past having to do with real estate, but it has to do with every investment that you would own. And the investment in mortgage notes is no different. Um, and like I said, the interest rates are going to dictate everything. And the interest rates, if you look at them, it's a roller coaster. It literally goes up and down and up and down. Um, I when the interest rates started to go up a while back, everyone was just going, "Oh, what's going to happen?" And I said, "They will come down, and they will come down." The Fed met in March and said that they weren't going to change anything in March or on March 15th, but they did say that they plan to have three reductions before the end of the year. And I will say that they will have 3 reductions before November of 2024 because the Democrats need that, or else they're not going to be elected to anything, even dog catcher. My dog catcher line is usually when we come back in.
Yeah, I'm short on the uptake on the queue.
So, could you expand on that, Paul? Because some people might not realize what the Fed's interest rate, what the Fed fund rate indicates for investors.
Okay, when the Fed sets a rate, it's called the prime rate.
Right.
And everything we do in real estate, well, not everything, but a lot of things that we do are revolving around the prime rate. You've probably heard the expression prime plus one, prime plus two. And those rates, that prime rate is the rate that the banks will give to their very, very best customers when it comes to loaning money. And even huge companies borrow money because you've probably also heard the expression OPM, other people's money, and that's how you make the most money you can. So, and that's also why a lot of people invest in mortgage notes, because you're dealing with other people's money. And then you are just riding the wave, so to speak, and see what happens with the interest rates, and the value of that note can go up or down. And hey, it's just like another piece of real estate. It really isn't that much different.
Mm-hmm. So I know that in the 80s, the interest rate, the prime interest rate, or the Fed's fund rates, interest rate on mortgages were around 18 to 20%, correct?
That's when people were going crazy. Yes, it was. And as a matter of fact, I had a client, I was a CPA back then, and I had a client who did mortgages. And the interesting thing was that back in that day, when you would get a mortgage or refinance, so to speak, you would have to pay points, that couple of points in order to get the loan. And that, by the way, figured into your average interest rate. But this company would just call people who have mortgages day and night virtually, and these people would refinance. They would have a great line that they would give them, which was all BS, pardon my French, and then this company would make a small fortune in doing the refinances because of those points. In 1 year, I think they netted $12 million net, bottom line. Small company. The next year, they did 20 million net, bottom line. That's
Net.
how crazy net. That's how crazy that mortgage interest scheme was back in the 80s.
So when you talk about points, what does that mean?
1 point means 1% of the amount of the mortgage.
So that was put on top of the mortgage. Why was that on top of the exorbitant interest rate that was the rate then? Why were points added to the mortgage amount?
Very simply, because they could get away with it.
Ah, okay, because they can, right?
Because they can. There wasn't the law that said they couldn't. And there are people out there, and I was a CPA for over 50 years. And I had a dear, dear friend who would call me up at least once a week. And I got to shut this off. And he would say to me, can I do this? And my answer was always, you can, but I'll bring you cigarettes in jail. And then, I mean, he was looking to get around the law any way he could. And he was, pretty good at coming up with schemes. But unfortunately for him, they weren't legal. But one day he called me up and he had a really good thought. And then I had a friend who was a CPA attorney, very smart boy. And I called him up, and we used to play a game for the benefit of the client. And that game was, can you top this? And I would come up with an idea, and this friend would come up with another idea to make it better, and then I would make it better, and then we would go until we were at the very top, the apex. And at that point, we did everything we could, and the client benefited tremendously.
Okay, good. So what made you decide to get into self-storage part of real estate investing?
When I was looking at the different real estate investments that you could make, self-storage and apartment buildings give you different kind of returns. Self-storage will give you a better cash flow, but less appreciation than multifamily housing, apartment buildings. And some people want it for their cash flow. And it's a lot easier to build, and it's a lot less dealing with your quote tenants. Excuse me, I'm getting dry. This is sugar-free. So certain people are just looking to replace the income that they had when they were working. And in a relatively safe investment, they could do that mainly with self-storage. But I always advocate for a well-rounded investment portfolio. So if you do self-storage like 2 times or 3 times, I want to see you pick up at least a small multifamily housing unit. I want you to balance things out. I also want you to make investments outside of real estate. And for that, we have some people that are managers of funds that we can turn you on to. But right now, my favorite, well, there are so many different investments. I mean, you've got the triple net lease, you've got the self-storage, you've got the apartment buildings. You have care facilities, and this is something that my partner Fred Sams and I were into for a little while. You have these care facilities where you buy a single family residence wherever it's convenient for you, and I will use Southern California as an example. You buy a single family residence, you have someone who is licensed to set up these facilities, and you get 4 patients in there. And these people are developmentally disabled. And you have an administrator, you have a staff, you deal with a whole lot of other things. You know what the cash flow on something like that a month is? Cash flow is between $15,000 and $20,000 a month.
On a healthcare
care facility like that,
okay,
for the developmentally disabled.
Or is this the same as assisted living facility?
No,
Okay.
no, you're doing a lot more than assisted living.
It's more like a group home.
It's like a group home?
Well, I look at a group home being a lot bigger, and I see a group home being 8 to 10 people. But this is literally for a group of 4. Where's my camera? A group of 4. And you have the 4 people, you have the administrator, and you have a staff.
I've visited people in houses like that,
and they run very well. And you know who pays you every month? State of California, or the state of Georgia. Now, one thing you got to realize is there are so many different economies in the United States. And you know that you buy real estate in Southern California, it's going to take every penny you have in your pocket. But if that person from California goes to Georgia, he's going to look at the properties and go, what's wrong with them? So the economy in Georgia is less, the expenses are less, and so is the amount that the state of Georgia will give you for these people.
Okay.
So the numbers that I just quoted you have to do with Southern California. And then the nice thing is, beside doing that and running that business, and by the way, then you can sell that business. And I have been involved in the sale of one of my accounting clients to DuPont years and years ago. Nice small little company, DuPont. And then you got to look at another thing, and that other thing is the real estate's going to go up, like everything else in Southern California. So you put that whole package together, that's a hell of a nice way to go.
But I guess the cost of entry is large because it is in Southern California.
Cost of entry is, like I started to say, you get a house, say $1 million house. You put down $200,000. You are required to have 6 months of reserve monies. So you have to do that. And then there are fees that people like my partner and I throw on top of that. And then we also take a piece of the company going forward because we help you on an ongoing basis.
Okay. So then who becomes the operator? Do I become the owner of the real estate? Do I rent out to the property to a business that takes care of
what you would do is you would set up an LLC.
Okay. So it is similar to a assisted living facility where you have the physical structure of the real estate and the business separate. Okay. So you're saying there's more of a margin, there's more profit flow with that type of facility versus an assisted living facility?
Much.
Okay. So these are called, are these the same as?
These are adult residential facilities.
Adult residential facilities. Okay.
I just found the right post-it note on the bottom of my computer. So.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, it's not as much. Well, at least for me, it's not as well known as assisted living facility or group homes.
No, it isn't as well known. And as a matter of fact, we were going to be very heavily involved in it. And then my partner decided to step back a little bit because you have to put in so much time to set these things up for the clients. And I thought that asking for like a 50% ongoing percentage was too much to ask. So we sort of backed off it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And somebody has to manage the staff and all the regulatory agencies and that.
Well, you do hire an administrator who is fully licensed to do all of that.
Yeah. I think
we got a little off the topic of notes.
Yeah, no, that's well. The topic was real estate investing, and that's one of the options.
It's one of the options, but then again, as a note investor, you can hold the note on that property and not be the actual owner. So that might be something for me to look into as buying the note for one of those facilities.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a simple mortgage on a single-family residence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if Maurice Thomas Jr. was on to defend himself, I think he's doing something related to that.
I think he is. He's doing. I think it's it has something to do with a group home rehabilitation or somber living. That's what it's called.
Yeah, and
what was it called?
Somber living.
Okay, never heard that.
Yeah. It's basically. He should be here to defend himself to describe it because I'm looking it up. As we're speaking right now.
Yeah, and I think he's leasing the properties right now, but he could be, for example,
sober living. I'm sorry, not
sober living. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother ran a number of houses for basically for people in child services.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
well, my partner, when he was married, he's now divorced, his wife and he opened up their home for children, not necessarily foster care because these kids had problems. Mm-hmm. And his wife happened to have been Filipino, and the Filipino community loves to do stuff like that. Number one, they are very good at it. Number two, they care about you. And number three, they'll work up enough to get a nice Social Security benefit when they retire and go back to the Philippines.
Yeah. Yeah, Bonnie's father is in a sort of a larger home now, but he would like to go back to his own property, and there's a Filipino in-home care organization, and I think they're out of his range, but that's something to consider.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is, and you can maybe get supplementary income from the state.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's sober living facilities here in where I'm at, and that is for people recovering from addiction, recovering from either drug addiction or alcohol addiction, and they have residents in the area, and I guess they have people who are I guess they call them Sherpas, where they supervise the people who live there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
There are some facilities, I think some in California, where they're providing some housing for basically the difficult to house and with a counseling center and a medical center attached to the facility.
Mhm.
Well, you can in Southern California now realize that each county, more or less, it has its own administration in
Yeah.
California. So you can have one county in San Diego backing you to the hilt, and then you go to Riverside County, and they make it really difficult for
Yeah.
you.
Right.
And the
Right.
neighbors generally don't like it.
Mhm.
Yeah, neighbors are not crazy about it, but the rule is, and this is if I remember correctly, you could set these things up 200 feet from each other, which basically means every other lot.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep. So basically, with the sober living facilities, is that some of the programs they don't advertise where the houses are. They could be living, they could be your neighbor across the street and not know it. It could
Yeah.
be, say, a large family. You think it's a large family, but it's actually a sober living facility. So
Yeah.
and they offer mentoring, they offer life skills. So it's very interesting. Financial
Also,
recovery.
they have day programs where you can open up that home to a whole group of people and make extra money on top of that base that I discussed before.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly, when we were into it, the state of California would give you, say, $11,000 to $12,000 per patient per month. And as a matter of fact, the state of California called them clients, which bugged the shit out of me. Pardon my English, because I look at a client as a business, and I look at a patient as someone who is being taken care of.
Okay. It's interesting because interesting.
Yeah. And the health authorities up here, they tend to talk to them about as clients rather. Yeah. And because people come in for a huge range of reasons.
Mhm.
Yeah. So anyway, it's more politically correct, I guess.
Yeah. And so that's
I've encountered so much over my years, over 50 years. I did stuff that other accountants don't even dream of doing, and it's all been great because it's all part of my knowledge now.
Mhm.
And then Greg over here is going to be publishing 3 books for me this year, where I talk about all of this stuff.
Oh, nice. So you'll be a published author.
You
By the way,
betcha.
The first one will probably be within a week, I think. I think we're in the
I
final.
have a couple of things to clean up, but yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
after the 15th of April.
Yes.
After the 15th, the dreaded day of taxes.
Well, it's I don't do taxes per se anymore, but in what we do to make income, everybody just wants to get it done by the 15th because what we do is save you income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Hey, I've been dealing with April 15th since I started working in 1965. Yes,
Wow.
I'm that old.
Okay, great. Yeah, but that again, you just opened up a new avenue where I can look at into owning the mortgage note, the promissory note on one of those properties, and in California. So that would be something for me to look into. Again, it is stable income because it would be guaranteed by the program. Since you're saying that the the cash flow and the margins are higher
Than
than
normal.
necessarily.
And also you get your money from the state of California. And in the beginning, they may be a little slow on payment because I've had different circumstances where that happened, but they do catch up, and then everything is on schedule.
Okay.
But also remember, you need that 6 months of reserves. So at the beginning, when you're going into that phase, you've got those reserves.
Okay.
You and I should have a conversation with my partner, Fred Sams.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking here at here in my local area. There are programs, and I think they're actually actively looking for houses to expand their program. They have residences in this area, and I guess they rent it out per bed.
Forgive me for not remembering. Where's the area?
I'm in Southwest Florida.
Okay. Yeah, my folks lived in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay, that's the opposite end.
That's the other side, I know.
Yep. Yep. That's interesting. There are various organizations here in this area.
But also, before you decide to go into this as far as buying the notes, I would look and see what the state of Florida pays the owners for the patients or clients, whatever you want to call them, because it's going to be totally different than California.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
But yet, Southern Florida is starting to become a mirror of California. Hey, New York became a mirror of California.
Don't say that.
Don't
say that.
I gotta tell you, if I was in New York and felt an earthquake, I would have soiled my pants. I mean, I'm used to it in Southern California, but whoa, they don't happen in New York.
Yeah, the last time it happened, I was there. It was 1984. We thought it was a big truck, and I said it doesn't feel like a big truck because I've been in earthquakes before.
The last time you were in New York or LA?
No, it was in 1984 in New York.
Okay. Yeah, I was long gone. I left in '69.
Okay.
That was a great place to grow up. I went to school on the corner of 23rd Street and Lexington Avenue, and I paid $23 for my first semester.
Wow.
I paid double that for my last semester, if that makes you feel any better.
No, you're not getting any sympathy from me.
Okay. So I hear I've got Dr. Ivan's website here, the notedoctor.com, and make an appointment with him and talk about note investing, and he has some passive note investment opportunities for you too. And then where's Paul's massive scrolling address?
So you have the note doctor going across. There I am.
There you go. Yeah. So if you want to know about taxes and real estate investing and
some fun war stories.
And war stories. Yes, we haven't got into the war stories yet, but
I'd like to hear a war story, Paul.
You want to hear one?
Yeah, please.
I negotiated the sale of one of my clients to E.I. DuPont, small company, one of the biggest companies in the world. And there was 4 men across the table, and my client and I on the other side of the table. And the first number they put out was something like 4 point something million or 6 point something million. and we asked for a break. So my partner and I said, we're not taking that number. We talked about sports, and then we had the other guys come in, and then we had lunch, and then they came in with a new offer, and it was $8.6 million, and I estimated that we would sell it for $9 million, and they ended up taking, each one of the four guys ended up taking home $100,000, so they felt like they accomplished something. About 4 weeks later, or 5 weeks later, after we started, quote, escrow, which is a letter of intent in that situation. But after we started the process, I got a phone call from head corporate counsel in DuPont, and he said to me that my client's wife bought stock after a certain period of time, and my client has to pick up a lot of income and pay $250,000 in income tax. I said, okay, let me get back to you. And I called my client and I appraised him of the situation. The gentleman was absolutely right. And my last words to my client were, can I play? And he goes, yes, we will like this. We worked very, very well together. So I called the guy back and I said, we're not picking up the income, knowing full well I'm not signing an income tax return that was $250,000 shy in income tax. So he goes, you have to. I said, I'm not. He goes, you have to. And I said, I'm not. And then I said, do you know what it sounds like when the phone hangs up? And I literally hung up on the guy. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I get another phone call. And he goes, you have to pick up the income. And I said, I'm not. And he goes again, you have to pick up the income. And I said, remember how we ended the last conversation? And I hung up on him again. And about 4 weeks later or so, I was in my office. And if you know anything about Southern California or Los Angeles, my office was in Century City. And I lived about 20 minutes away or so in an area called Marina del Rey. And on the way home, I stopped at my watering hole and had a few drinks and a nice dinner. And then I made it home to a message from my client who was in Wilmington, Delaware. This is midnight here, was in Wilmington, Delaware. And the message was to call him no matter what time it was. So I picked up the phone and I called. And he picks up the phone. And I said, I woke you. And he goes, no shit, give me a minute. Then he comes back on the phone and he goes, they don't like you here. And I said, it's not a popularity contest. They made him an offer. They took $250,000 and divided it by the aggregate tax rate and wrote him a check for $560 some odd thousand, which after he paid all the taxes came out to exactly $250,000. And they paid the tax. Now, how did I accomplish this? I knew that DuPont would never do anything wrong, would never be associated with doing anything wrong. And that if this ever got out, it would embarrass them and they weren't going to do it. It wasn't their tax to pay, but I got them to pay $560 some odd thousand.
There we go.
That's just one of them.
Interesting. That sounds more interesting than the two straws that broke the camel's back with me. The first one was in 2005. I had a tenant in a rent-to-own situation near Kissimmee, and she brought her non-refundable deposit to the table. Long story short, she stopped making payments, and it took me 7 months to remove her from the property. She filed for bankruptcy, and at the end of the day when we finally moved her out, it cost me around $15,000 to fix the property up and get it sold. The other one that broke the straw on my back is that I was doing a remote fix and flip in Georgia, in Decatur, Georgia. The house was extremely cheap. We got it for $120,000. The rehab was around $65,000, $70,000. There was so many cost overruns, so many delays. I couldn't get a hold of the contractor, the general contractor. When I finally was able to get someone to look at the property, see what they were doing, they had done 1/3 of what they uh, were supposed to do. So I had to fire the contractor, find a new contractor,
Start all
and
over again.
start it all over again, and finally sold the house at a loss a year later. The market at that time was going up. The market actually turned around and was going down. The original selling price was supposed to be $320,000. If I remember correctly, we sold the house for $230,000. So with the cost overruns, time lost, the blood pressure medication I had to take, I think I lost $65,000.
It's not the way it's supposed to go in real estate. I have been very fortunate. I've really lived a charmed life. I was on the TV show The Price is Right 2 times.
Really?
I won a car each time.
Wow.
And I was on the very first show back in 1972. My second son was just born at the time. And I went on the show and I made it to the big deal, and I was $4 off. The actual retail value was $2,504, and my bid was $2,500.
How much?
25. It was a car, an exercycle, and a pair of roller skates. But this was 1972.
Okay.
And it was a piston engine Mazda. So I was supposed to be close but under the actual retail value. And I figured the car was going to be about $2,500, and the other two things put me under, and I was $4 off. The very first show, by the way.
Do you have a recording of that?
Yes, I do. Go to YouTube and look up Paul Levine, The Price is Right. It was one of them was 1972, and then they asked me back for the 40th anniversary show in 2012. Hey, I'm telling you, I am so lucky you can't imagine. But it's it's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
And it ain't over yet. Because
No.
my father made it to 98 before he passed away from injuries sustained in a car accident. My mother made it to 95, and she passed away from colon cancer because the doctor did a colonoscopy and hurt her. So she never went back, and she had bad polyps. And hey, if they were both, didn't have those two circumstances, they would have made it to 105, 110. And my father was still,
Wow.
He would go shopping and to a supermarket, and he would come home and tell you what he bought and how much everything cost by the ounce. His mind was still that sharp.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky, and I don't, I love the ride, so it's going to continue.
That's great.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But I just, I've been put in really situations that a CPA would never be put in. I worked on lawsuits with attorneys, and I valued businesses, and I was an expert witness. And I loved being an expert witness when it came to cross-examination, because I knew more about what I did than the attorney did. So I enjoyed cross-examining. I had one attorney literally turn his back on me, throw his hands up in the air, and walk away. He said, "I'm done with him."
Wow.
Wow.
You
Wow.
don't mess with a New York Jewish boy.
Oh boy. Oh,
So shall we leave it on that?
Hey, especially those who went to my school, and it was a special school because, like I said, it cost me $23. So everybody that went to that school got a free ride, got a full scholarship. And so when you raised your hand in class, there were 29 other students and the professor who wanted to make you wrong and them right. So that set me up for my future because I learned what competition was.
Yeah.
interesting. Very interesting.
So what do you guys want to talk about next week?
What were we going to talk about this week?
We're supposed to talk about taxes, but I guess we got sidetracked.
Yeah.
I do have an interesting story to say that I remember I grew up in New York City. I grew up on 108th Street.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, great.
And I remember one day someone knocks on the door and we weren't expecting anybody. And I see this man with a hat. And I went back to my mom and I said, Mom, there's somebody here with a hat. She tells me, "I'll go ask his name." And I don't remember his name. And apparently, because of his accent, he was Jewish and he was collecting the rent. So, how do I know that? Because my mom went to the door, she saw who it was, came back, and then went to the door again and never saw the man. I saw him once afterwards. That was it. So I asked the kids around on the block in the building, and they said, "Yeah, he's the owner."
Yeah, it is a culture, and I know what I said could be, construed a lot of different ways, but it is a culture, especially New York, and especially that school. That school was 16 stories on the corner of 23rd Street and Lexington Avenue, so we had elevators. But we had elevators that you used, we had elevator operators who took us to certain floors, and they were black, and 98% of the school was Jewish. So we would tell jokes in Yiddish in the elevators, and the elevator operators learned Yiddish because they wanted to enjoy the jokes as well. So when somebody would tell a joke in Yiddish, everybody would laugh, including the black elevator operators.
It's interesting. Anyway,
It was
I
fun.
have nothing but positive memories of all of my Jewish friends in New York.
It was a great way to grow up.
Mhm. Anyway, any horror stories about any other horror stories about taxes and real estate?
I I have a story related to what Paul said about, well, I'm not going to pay the taxes, right? We're not going to take it. I had some friends who had a wool shop in Vancouver, and before I got involved, they had imported a very large carding machine, which is about 20 feet long by about 10 feet wide, weighs a couple tons probably. Anyway, the Vancouver Port Authority said they wanted a big port fee for the machine, right? And so so he just says, "Nah, you keep it," and he hung up. The Port Authority delivered the machine.
Really?
They didn't want it stuck in their warehouse forever. He just, I don't need it. You keep it.
All you got to do is figure out what's the other person's motivation.
Yeah.
And once you figure that out, you can play with that. I've been in negotiations having to do with real estate where I was the realtor, and there was an adjustment to the price of $200,000. It was a property that was sold for $4.6 million, and we got it down as an adjustment, which didn't affect the price, it was an adjustment in escrow, and I got my full commission, 3%, mind you, on the full price of 4.6, even though there was a credit of $200,000.
Hmm.
And just knowing where to put things. Am I alone? Oh,
Yeah, we're back. We're back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the spirit of meeting our contractual requirements for the broadcast today, we need to talk about taxes a little bit to introduce the continuing discussion next week. So, Paul, in terms of either the note investing or real estate investing, what's one or two quick tips about how to manage your taxes to reduce the tax burden?
Well, first thing is, there's somebody who advertises, it's a CPA firm who advertises on Facebook and says they can save you $20,000 in income tax. Don't believe them. First of all, they never saw your return. They don't know what your income is. They don't know anything. And they're making this outrageous statement. So that's something that can get you audited by the IRS. The second thing is, you should talk to your accountant when you do your tax return, and most of you may have done it by now, but talk to your accountant. Let him know everything that's going on, and ask him. Because one thing I do is I used to add notes to the tax return because I knew what the IRS would be asking. And I wanted to answer that question before they ever sent you a letter. So communicate with the IRS. Then they're people, believe me. Even on audits, I've had audits where I've become friends with the auditors because they're doing their job. It's not an easy job, and nobody likes them. And if you show them some respect and work with them, as soon as I got an agent to say we, it was over. I had him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my experience too. Is as long as you're communicating with them and having a discussion, they're people. So, yeah.
And you just got to, from your side of the table, figure out what's important. I've got another great war story, but I'll save that till next week.
Okay.
Just
Well,
remind me.
that'll be your cliffhanger.
Remind me next week to bring up the one that the audit was downtown.
The audit was downtown.
Yeah, because I hate to go downtown.
Okay.
So the audit was downtown, but I came out smelling like a rose.
Awesome. Okay, we'll tune in next week for the story.
The audit was downtown.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the time.
I can't call it a horror story, but I've been audited 3 times. The first time it was, I think it was year 2 when I opened my practice, because back then in the late 80s, early 90s, Washington Heights section of New York was a hub of illegal activity. And there were a lot of cash transactions.
Yep.
And my brother told me they picked my number out of the hat. And because my brother's an accountant, he said that once you audit it, it flags you for a second audit. And I believe it was 3 years after that, I was audited again. And then 4 years after that, I was audited again. The 3 times I didn't find anything, but because we were transacting with a lot of cash back then, it was a common thing to be audited in.
Yeah, they go, that's one of their targets. But the thing is that if you get the agent to do a no change audit, not even giving you a refund, it has to be a no change audit, they're not going to audit you for the next 3 years on that. So
I got audited 3 years afterwards, and then 4 years after that.
Right. So they went along with it. But the thing is, you take advantage of that 2 or 3 years in the middle, and you take the expenses to any number you want, because they're not going to audit you again. And I once had an auditor who wanted to give my client back 200 and some odd dollars, and I said, "You keep it. The government could use it better than my client," and do a no change. He did that, and then for the next 3 years, I took expenses like crazy.
Okay.
That's exactly what we did. I took expenses like crazy. I expensed out so many things.
Yeah.
Yep.
What?
As long as you don't miss it. Now, that the thing that is very important for what you said is you did cash transaction. The one thing they want to make sure of is that you report all of the income.
Oh yeah.
Once you report all of the income, you can have discussions on the expenses, till the sun shines. It doesn't matter. But as long as you report the income, they're not going to really get upset with you.
Okay. So there we go. So we're going to start next week with a discussion and Paul's war story, and come on by and we'll see what comes up.
I'll be here for that. I gotta hear.
Yeah, we'll have a good time.
We'll have a good time.
This was a great threesome. I loved it.
Yeah. We hope Larry and Rodney and Maurice will join us.
And I'll see if I can get Fred to come also.
And Fred, yeah, there we go. Awesome. Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your Saturday, everyone, and take care.
Thank you.
You guys take care, and we'll be here same time as they used to say, same time, same station.
Same bat time, same bat station.
Same bat channel, same bat station.
Yes. Yep. See you next week.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Okay.